What's happening, people? I hope you're all well. So, I haven't been on this channel for a while, and today I'm going to look at Tyson Fury v Deontay Wilder 3, and I'm also going to look at Anthony Joshua v Oleksandr USYK. So, I'm just going to wait a little bit and then I'm going to get started. Make sure you hit the like button, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and make sure you get involved in the chat. Gonna give it about 1 minute, then I'm gonna get started. You give it about 30 seconds and then I get started. Shout out Loz the Punch Out TV. He says 2 minutes. I'm going to get started and then you can come in whenever you're ready, you know. So, I'm going to get started. So, let's start with Tyson Fury v Deontay Wilder 3. Now, something I'd like to point out is that many people seem to be thinking that this is going to be an easy fight and this is a foregone conclusion. I'm not really of the impression that that's necessarily going to be the case, because both fighters have been out the ring for a very long time. They've both been out the ring for the same amount of time. And ultimately, you know, you got to look at Tyson Fury's history of when he's out the ring. So from the Klitschko fight to the Sefer Safiri fight, I think it was, it didn't look good, did it? And Tyson Fury has a history of blowing up in between fights. So Tyson Fury being out for a very long time and he's going straight in there with a puncher when he doesn't have a great history of keeping fit in between fights. You know, that is something that should be of concern. And I don't necessarily know if Tyson Fury has been keeping on top of his fitness for the majority of his time out. So that is definitely something to look out for. What's happening, Lord?
Can you hear me, George?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, crystal clear, pal.
Long time since we've done this.
Yes, sir. Been a while.
How you doing anyway?
Yeah, I'm good. You?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. So I just started off with Tyson Fury v Deontay Wilder 3, and I was just talking about how I don't think it's the foregone conclusion that a lot of people are saying it is, because one of the points I was looking at is the fact that Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder have both been out the ring for a very long time.
Yeah.
And not only that, but Tyson Fury doesn't have the best history of keeping fit in between fights. And if you're not sharp going into a fight and you're going up against a puncher who can catch you at any time,
Yeah.
that surely has to benefit the puncher.
Yeah. Yeah, you could say so. Yeah, most definite. Because the thing is, as well, he's as we know in like heavyweight fighting, one punch can change the game, but he's got power to end the game with one punch.
Exactly. I mean, Tyson Fury, not having the best history in between fights. And one of the problems with that, I mean, look, even if Tyson Fury was keeping fit in between fights, he's still going to be rusty to an extent, but they both are because they've been out of the ring since 2019, is it? Or is it 2020? I think 2020, but
Yeah,
early.
February, wasn't it? February 2020.
So they're both going to be rusty to an extent. But when you're rusty and you haven't been keeping fit all around the clock, because I've seen Tyson Fury, I mean, he looked a little bit out of shape, arguably, at one point. So if you're going up against a puncher when you've been out of the ring for over a year, that's not good. That's not. So
Yeah,
I think that it's not necessarily the foregone conclusion that people think it is. And the other thing I want to look at is that Deontay Wilder looked really off from the first bell in that fight. I watched it again. Recently.
yeah,
He looked really off. Like even before the first knockdown, something was off with the way he was throwing his punches, the way he was moving in the ring. And I don't know if that was an off night, but I've not seen Deontay Wilder really look that uncoordinated and clumsy in a fight before. So I don't know if Fury kind of lucked out a little bit in that fight. But something tells me that Deontay Wilder is quite possibly going to be looking a lot better than he looked in the last fight. Because did you think that he looked a bit off in that second fight?
yeah, most definite. To me, he seemed a little bit like when AJ fought Ruiz. If you can remember when AJ came into the ring and they were doing the announcements, he was like looking all around, like as if he was shocked, as if he couldn't believe where he was. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know. You could tell when before the first bell went that you could tell that AJ looked. He just looked uncomfortable. Didn't look himself. And looking back at the second fight between Fury and Wilder, I sort of gathered the same things that Wilder didn't look like you say. He didn't look like himself. He didn't look comfortable. Something was wrong. What I don't know, but he just didn't look like you say. He's normally quite a confident guy, isn't he? You know,
Definitely.
but he just didn't seem like he was on the ball.
Something was definitely off. I mean, from the coordination to perhaps the just his whole manner was a bit off. But I will say this also, I think he should come in light for this third fight because I know that might sound weird because Fury's a big man. Fury might come in 270, 280, or who knows. But and at the end of the day, right, when Wilder weighed 212 pounds or whatever it was, he knocked Fury down twice. And I think that he might be quicker when he's light. I think he might actually be able to create the space when he's light. And, people might say, well, he won't have as much power, but he knocked Fury down twice when he was 212 pounds. A lot of cruiserweights are going into the ring at 212 pounds. The other thing is, if you look at Wilder's fights, I'm actually going to quickly throw up his box rec. The fights, because Wilder's maximum weight, the weight that he's weighed the most for a fight, I believe, was his last fight against Tyson Fury. He weighed 231 pounds and he struggled in that fight. Now, when he weighed 200 and 28 pounds against Johan Duhaupas, I thought he struggled in that fight. When he weighed 228 pounds against Artur Szpilka had his moments in that fight.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
And Eric Molina had his moment, at least one moment against Deontay Wilder when he was 229 pounds in that fight. So But when he weighed 220 pounds against Deverne for the second fight, he knocked him out in one round. Um, when he weighed 214 pounds against Luis Ortiz, he got him out of there. When he weighed 212 pounds, he got a draw against Tyson Fury. I actually thought he won that fight. I thought Wilder actually won that. And
Yeah.
then when he weighed 223 pounds against Brazil, he knocked him out in the first round. Luis Ortiz 219. So when he's roughly 220 pounds, maybe a bit lighter, it looks like he seems to do better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Between 215, 220. Yeah, I think like you say the extra the extra 15 or so pounds, 16 pounds. It's a lot. It's an extra stone and a bit, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of weight.
Exactly. And I think that sometimes when you weigh more, you're not as quick, maybe not as
Of course.
coordinated, and you're just not as angry. I don't know. When you're lighter, you seem to be a bit more aggressive sometimes. I don't know. It's like giving a I don't know, it's like giving a tiger a full meal, going to be less likely to want to hunt. So I just think that Deontay Wilder's best weight, maybe 212 to 220. I think he should
Yeah.
go against Fury. But ultimately, I think that it's not the foregone conclusion that people think that it is. And
No, I agree.
what do you think about Malik Scott being his coach? Do you think he's too inexperienced to be his coach in this? Is this Malik Scott's first fight as a coach?
Um, I couldn't quite tell you. Think it could be. Uh, go on. I'll chime in after.
No, I was just going to say, do you think it's potentially a mistake to have like a guy who's coming in as a coach for the first time and in a fight that is this meaningful for Deontay Wilder? Like, do you think it's a bit of a mistake? Do you think they could have had someone else in there a bit more experienced?
Um, yeah, I do, but at the same time, we don't know what he's about because we haven't seen him. You know, I've heard people say stupid things like, "Oh, he was a shit boxer or crap boxer, so how's he going to be a good coach?" Do you know what I mean? Just because you weren't, and I don't even think he was a bad boxer, but I'm just saying, even if he was a bad boxer, it don't mean that he can't be a good coach.
That's true. I
Mm.
mean, I wouldn't say he was, from a technical perspective, a bad boxer. He was quite quick. He was quite technically skilled, but he just wasn't really about the fight. He didn't really have much fight in him. It's a shame. He actually had some. He was quite silky, wasn't he? He was quite skillful.
Yeah,
However, he wasn't really about the fight. So I don't know, man. I think that I think potentially it's a mistake. I mean, if he wins, it looks great. That was a great move. If he loses, then he was too inexperienced. I mean, he I don't know. I think he could have maybe brought someone in with a bit more experience for a fight this meaningful. I think there's coaches out there that, with a coach, someone coming in as a coach for the first time, in my opinion, I think that you would want them to have a few fights at a lower level, because I suppose it's all about, things, not just the fight. It's like getting to the ring on time, the ham wraps, and if Wilder's in trouble, what has Malik Scott got to reference? Like, what experience has he got to fall back on? So that's my concern, to be honest with you. What if Wilder's really hurt? And what does Malik Scott, never been in a situation with a fighter who's hurt before? So what does he say? What does he say to Malik Scott? What does Malik Scott say to Wilder in that situation? So I don't
yeah,
know.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, but like I say, bro, these are the things what we just don't know. We won't know until fight night because I believe I believe Wilder's got he's got belief in him because I don't think he would have had him in his corner for so long, and they've been for what training videos I have seen on social media of them sparring and doing bits of pad work and stuff like that, they do seem to see. To me, they seem as if they've gelled. I don't know. I just get the vibe that he seems a different person to me. Now, like you say, that's whether or not that can be carried off in the ring. That's a whole different ball game. But me personally, I think he's done the right thing in taking a bit of a gamble because I think, like I say, I think he sees something in him, what he believes in. I don't know. I just get that's the vibe I get. He seems very focused and he just seems to. He's you know what I mean. Like I say, I think he's got belief in him. But like you say, whether or not it pans out, that's a whole different story.
I hear you. It might work. It may not work. I mean, he has been in the background for a while, so who
Yeah,
knows, man? Who knows? There's only one way we're going to find out, and that's obviously when the fight comes. At this moment in time, what do you think that Wilder needs to do differently to win the fight?
I think what he's got to do is, for me, he's got to pump that jab out a lot because, like we've often spoke about this before, that we think he's got. I think he's got a tremendous jab, but he just doesn't use it enough. He's a very effective with it when he uses it. I think for me, what he's got to do, he's got to he's got to use his jab. He's got to throw combination punches as well. Not he got too reliant on just sitting back and waiting for an opportunity to come to him, and then he would release his right hand. Some fighters do get like that. I've seen many fighters like that who were big one punch knockout artists. But he's got to use his jab. He's got to throw combination punches, and he's got to move around. And he hasn't. He's got to learn how to box off the back foot as well, because Fury, for me, I think Fury's going to do the same thing. He's gonna come forward, lean on him, and try and smother him to take his right hand away from him, because I think Wilder's one of them fighters where he needs the distance to cut back the hammer to let his punch go. If there's a fighter what's right in front of you, he takes away your right hand because you haven't got the leverage that you need to pull your hand back and to release it. I mean, you can still hit with your right hand, but it's not going to be as effective as fighting, keeping him. His right hand will be more effective if he can keep Tyson Fury at a distance than what it will be if Tyson Fury is in close to him. He can't get drawn into a fight on the inside or anything like that. That's how I see it. He's got to move about, use his jab, keep that jab pumping out, keep the combinations going, use his uppercuts. Just don't rely on that one punch looking for it, because if you do, then I think the fight could end up the same way.
I hear what you're saying. I think you raise a great point. He needs that distance to get, full impact on the right hand. He throws it very straight.
Yeah,
So he needs that distance to fully extend it. So I think that's going to be key in this fight. He needs to create the space. And, he has a very effective jab. Look at Wilder v Stavern 2. That jab was hard.
yeah.
He even bust Fury's nose up with a jab in the first fight. So
Yes.
I think he needs to jab Fury and get his respect early to make Fury think twice about coming forward. Because you got to remember, right? Wilder's got that right hand. So if Fury's thinking about the jab, he's also going to be thinking about the right hand as well. So it's going to make him very cautious about coming forward. Wilder needs to get Fury's respect early, and he can work from there. What do you think Tyson Fury needs to do to win the fight? What do you think he needs to do?
Um, I think he needs to do pretty much the same thing as what he did in the first fight. He needs to smother Wilder. I mean, he did to me. He did a lot of dirty tactics. There was a lot of punching behind the back of the head, the excessive holding, the excessive leaning on the fighter. You know, he was leaning. Virtually, Wilder's head was touching the floor. He was leaning on him. But saying that, that's part of it's not clean boxing by any way, but it's effective because you're draining the fighter of his energy because he's the much bigger man, the much heavier man, and he's got to push up all the time to get him off him. That's taking his energy away from him. But for me personally, I think Tyson Fury for beat Deontay Wilder has pretty much got to do the same thing, smother him and take that right hand away from him.
And do you, and do you think that that's a more effective tactic than what he did in the first fight of trying to box Wilder?
I think so, yeah, because if you remember in the first fight, there was quite a lot of rounds where they both had success, where both fighters had success. I mean, I do believe Fury was in better condition than what he was in the first fight, but I wouldn't say a lot better condition because at the end of the day, Fury had two warm up fights and then he fought Wild straight after. So he was virtually in camp for a full year, wasn't he? Or maybe even a bit longer. But I think that he needs to do the effective thing of smothering him and taking him away his right hand because I believe if he keeps a little bit of distance and he tries to box Wilder, I think he might get clocked with the right hand.
That's true. He might also get hit with the right hand if he tries to walk forward and he tries to apply pressure because he could walk right onto it. So I mean, it's a dangerous fight for Fury, and I think Tyson Fury. I think maybe coming forward and taking away the space is the best option. To be honest with you, Fury is the much stronger man physically, on the inside.
Yeah. I agree there. Yeah.
So I think
he's so much bigger, isn't he? He's so much heavier.
Exactly. So I think that Fury's tactics may very well be just to apply the same tactics as in the second fight. So ultimately, who have you got at the moment? Who are you thinking leaning towards at the moment?
Do you know what, Judd? I'm glad this fight happened because I agree with what you said earlier on. I think there's more to this story than what people think. I must admit, I quite favour Wilder because, for the simple fact, I just think. I mean, I don't know. I really don't. To be honest, Judd, I really don't know. Mate, because I look at Tyson Fury and I think all the messing around, all the joking, and all these sayings, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. I look at him and sometimes I think you're overlooking him now because of the second fight. You're overlooking him, but then at the same time, I'm thinking, is he doing the same as what he did last time? Because he virtually told everyone what he was going to do before the second fight, and no one believed him that he was going to walk forward and try and knock him out in that. And that's what ended up happening. Well, he didn't knock him out, but he ended up stopping him. But I just think Wilder is a different person now because you can see when they did the press conference that his best form of defence is not to let Fury get under his skin. Don't get engaged in a heated conversation with him. He was just very quiet. He said a few things, and I just think he's mega focused for it. But at the same time, I sometimes think, is he too emotional? Is he focused that much because he's emotional? Because he really wants. He said he wants to end his career. Is that a bad thing? Like, is he looking too much into it? So, to be honest, to answer your question, after going round the block a few times, I really don't know, bro. I really don't know. I think, I mean, like I say, you can never write Wilder off because it only takes that one punch and he's out of there. But at the same time, I don't know what Fury's going to do because he's Mr. Unpredictable, isn't he?
It's
So
very hard to predict what's going to happen in the fight.
exactly,
I think that the timeout definitely plays a factor into the fight, and I also believe that Fury, he's got multiple ways to win. Wilder, he only has really one way to win. Although don't be if you went out there and jabbed with Fury, I think he surprised some people, but it is unpredictable. So I mean, that's fair enough if you haven't really got an answer right now.
yeah,
That's understandable. Maybe you'll change your opinion closer towards the fight.
yeah,
So I want to ask you about, obviously, moving on to Anthony Joshua versus Oleksandr USYK. What are your thoughts on that fight? What do you sort of make of the fight? Do you think is it a fight that interests you at all?
yes, yes. Another very interesting fight. At one point, I was looking blind into it. Who's asking? Someone's asking for a link. Um,
I
at,
recognize
one,
it, actually.
at one point, I was very blind to it, thinking, oh, that he's not a natural heavyweight. Usyk's a good fighter, don't get me wrong. The boy can fight. I'm not taking that away from him. But I was being very ignorant to it at first because I was thinking, well, AJ's just going to trap you on the ring ropes, and he's just going to bust you up and knock you out, and that could definitely happen. But at the same time, after watching a couple of AJ fights back a few weeks ago, I've come to the conclusion that Usyk has got a very good chance, and I've heard a few people say this, and I laughed at first, but if Usyk can box and just use his jab all night and the 1-2s and move around, he could cause a problem for Anthony Joshua because he could have Joshua chasing him all night, and if he's slick enough to get out of the way of them punches and not get trapped on the ropes, then he could quite easily box his way to a victory. I don't see him knocking AJ out at all. I don't see that. I don't think he's got the power to knock him out. But I definitely think he's got the skills to completely outbox him, if providing he can stay away from being trapped in a corner or trapped on the ropes.
It's an interesting fight. I mean, cruiserweight undisputed champion versus a heavyweight, and I don't know. It's an interesting fight. I think that Anthony Joshua, he hasn't really fought a southpaw before as a pro. I mean, he fought Charles Mine, but I'm not really, less said about that fight, the better. I think that he hasn't come up against a southpaw before, and not only that, but also someone that's mobile, really mobile, someone that's going to use the southpaw stance to make AJ turn, to make Joshua turn rather.
Yeah,
He's gonna turn Joshua. He's going to try and spin him. He's going to try and get him out of punch range. So he's going to make it hot. He's going to try and take Joshua's jab away and take his right hand away by trying to use angles.
yeah,
And I think for me, if Usyk can take the power, this becomes a very interesting fight. And he actually took quite a bit of Chisora's power. Now, people might say, "Oh, that's Chisora," but you know, who's to say that Anthony Joshua punches harder than Derek Chisora? That's not to say, it doesn't really work like, oh, he's some people might say Joshua is much better than Chisora. Well, how do you know that Joshua punches harder than Chisora if both of them punch the punch bag?
That's
Like,
very true.
Chisora.
Del Boy can bang as well.
Exactly, and he took quite a bit of punishment from Chisora in that fight, Oleksandr USYK. And so that's suggestive that he may be all right at heavyweight, taking punches. So if he can take the power, and if he can take the power and he can use his southpaw stance to turn Anthony Joshua and take Joshua's jab away from him, and I think the main points are if he can take the power and he can take away Joshua's uppercut and Joshua's jab, then it becomes a very interesting fight.
I totally agree. But like I say, the only thing what worries me about him, if you watch the first 2 rounds of the Usyk and Derek Chisora fight, I think it was round 2, or it might be towards the end of round 1 or round 2, Usyk got clipped off Chisora, and he sort of wobbled him. And I looked and I thought, hey, he's in trouble now. But fair play to Usyk, he rode the storm. Like you say, he did take some punishment off Derek in that fight, especially the first 2 rounds. I thought this is going to be easy work, but he basically did what you've just said. He took the power and he boxed him, used the angles, and took away his right hand, and he boxed his way to a comfortable victory, I think. So that's why I see this fight as very interesting. But I think if AJ traps him and puts him can trap him in a corner and get him on the ropes, then it's good night Vienna for Usyk. I think he'll get knocked out in brutal fashion. But if you can't punch what you can't catch, then it becomes a different story.
I hear what you're saying, and I think that the thing with Anthony Joshua is he's not like Derek Chisora, so he's not going to walk Usyk down. He's going to stand at a distance and try and box. He's going to box more from a distance, whereas Derek Chisora is going to try and walk you down and try and make you get up close and personal. He's going to get personal in your face. So I think that Usyk may actually have more time to get his work off.
Good point, yeah.
Another thing that's interesting is Usyk's going to need to overcome the reach deficiency, the reach deficit against Joshua, because he's going to have a reach disadvantage. He's going to have a height disadvantage. So that's another thing that Usyk's going to have to be able to overcome. At the moment, who have you got in that fight?
And on I've got AJ. AJ late stoppage. I would say round 9. I've got AJ knocking him out in round 9, round 10. But I wouldn't write Usyk off of boxing his way to a victory. But I'd have to go for AJ on this.
But do you think that... Go on.
I was just going to quickly say, I wouldn't say... Like you say, it's another very interesting fight. I'm going to go with AJ then. I'm going to go with AJ on this one.
That's fair enough. But if Usyk did box his way to, where he clearly won the fight, do you think they give it to him?
Well, that's that's a very interesting question. Don't know. Money talks, don't it? It's over here in the UK. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that he would have to win very convincingly. I'm talking to get a 15-13, a 115-113, it'd have to be like a 118-111. Like in reality, like I think he'd need to win it'd need to be 8-2 for them to score it 5-3. You see what I'm saying? and I think that if he was to win a decision, it would have to be wide, because if it's close, it's going to Joshua. And I think another thing to look out for is the premature ref jumping in as well for Joshua. So if Joshua hurts Usyk remotely, then I think that the ref might be looking to jump in and stop the fight in so that Joshua can get the stoppage. And because I think that there are people out there who want to see Joshua versus Fury. So Usyk cannot, if Usyk is on the ropes and looks a little bit hurt, then I don't know if you saw, obviously, Vladimir Klitschko versus Joshua. In that fight, I thought Klitschko could have continued a little longer because he wasn't really getting clean on the ropes. I think Usyk, if he finds himself on the ropes and catches a few, the ref might run in, like, be like Carlos.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Yeah,
if Joshua is, I don't know, if it's something like Usyk wins on points, but it's narrow, then it goes to Joshua. Judges will give it to Joshua. So I think Usyk, it's going to be difficult because he's up. The judges are going to be against him. The ref is going to be against him. And there are people with money that want Joshua versus Fury to take place. So it's going to be hard for Usyk. I think if Usyk, as I say, can take away Joshua's jab, can take his power, and can stop Joshua from landing those uppercuts, then I think it becomes a very interesting fight. I also want to see what Usyk weighs in as. I've heard some stories about 230 something. I think he shouldn't be doing that. I think 220 max.
What did he weigh for? Sorry, what did he weigh for the David Chisora fight? Because I thought he looked a little bit flabby around the stomach for that fight. I think that's the heaviest he's ever weighed.
Checking now. 217.
Oh, right.
He didn't look great in terms of he did look he's not looking as mobile. I actually watched Usyk v Chisora, Usyk v Spellew, and I can actually see a bit more mobility in the Bellew fight. So he lost a bit of mobility moving up to heavyweight, which it's not the biggest surprise in the world really, because he's adding more weight to the frame. But I don't know. I wouldn't recommend anything over 220 for Joshua.
No. If he comes in at 230, what did he fight Del Boy at 218? Did you say, or 217?
217.
So if he comes in at 230, he's virtually going to be like he's got concrete in his boots. That's going to slow him right down.
I think so. I think he needs to be very careful about how much weight he adds on. But hopefully that's not true. Hopefully he comes in at around 220 or a bit lighter, and I'll be looking forward to seeing how that works for him. Yeah. So I'm probably going to leave it in about 5 minutes. Is there any other fights on? What do you think? Frank Sanchez versus Efe Ajagba. What are your thoughts? Very quickly.
Cracking fight. Fight. Really looking forward to that one. That is another 50-50. There's a few. There's that Sanchez and Efe fight. I'm looking forward to that. I think that's a great undercard fight. A true 50-50 fight. I haven't got a clue who's going to win that one, but I do believe that fight ain't going the distance. I think someone's getting knocked out in that fight. And the Carlos Takam Joe Joyce fight, I think that's going to be a good fight. I think Takam's going to give Joe some problems, but I have to go for Joe. I do think Joe will get a late stoppage, but I can see Takam having some really successful rounds in that fight, especially because he's the smaller man. It's always harder for a taller boxer to punch down on a littler fella, and especially a little fella who likes to duck under your punches. He likes to duck under and come up with hooks and uppercuts. So
it can be awkward.
Yeah, I really do. Because if you watch the AJ struggled with Takam, and I think like you just pointed out before, when if the referee jumps in like the on USYK, like if they do what they did against Takam, you know, Takam wasn't in any kind of trouble in that fight. Okay, he got knocked down a couple of times, but he wasn't in no trouble. Against
No,
Derek Chisora, he was in trouble, yeah. But yeah, I think that Frank Sanchez fight I think that's going to be a barn burner, that, George.
I think that's going to be a great fight. Really looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
And let me just very quickly just say, LR in the chat said Usyk will beat Joshua and casuals start to learn about boxing. Now, casuals ain't going to... I agree that Usyk can beat Joshua, but in terms of casuals going to start to learn about boxing, they're casuals for a reason. They don't want to know about boxing. They just want to know about Sky Sports. They want to know about Anthony Joshua. They want to know about Tyson Fury. They may want to know about Dillian White if we're talking about the UK. When it comes to actual boxing, it's not going to happen. They don't want to know about it, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
so very quickly, Efe Ajagba vs Frank Sanchez. Who are you leaning towards in that one?
I might just favour Frank Sanchez because of his work ability. I think he's the more busier fighter than the two. But I do believe that FA hits harder.
That's fair. It's fair enough. And you know, it's a great fight. 2 unbeatens, putting it on the line. You know, it's great to see. And you know, the loser can come back depending on how they lose. If it's a close competitive fight, then whoever loses can still come back, and still a prospect in my opinion. But very quickly, how old is Frank Sanchez?
I don't quite know. Is
How old
he?
do you think he is? He's listed as 28. I'm 27.
Yeah,
He's not a year older than me.
I think he's a bit older than that. He could be early 30s.
Really? I reckon he could be in his 40s, mate. Let's have a look. Frank Sanchez. So Frank Sanchez, 28 years old.
No,
I don't
he's
think
not
so.
28. Never.
I think he's more in his late 30s to early 40s, in my opinion. Apparently, Efe Ajagba's older as well.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. They always say that he lies about his age.
So, but then Ortiz as well, he's another one. So there's quite a few out there who maybe, I don't know, maybe they want to make themselves look more appealing, that there's this new 27-year-old instead there's this new 37-year-old. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but either way, it's been great getting back on talking boxing with you. We need to do this again soon. You know,
Oh,
whenever
yes.
you feel like it, man.
Yeah.
No pressure, no, you know, like we got to make a video whenever we can make videos whenever we want to, man.
Yeah, most definite. I've enjoyed it, mate.
No, definitely, man, definitely.
It's
All right,
been
man.
a long time.
No, we'll definitely do that again soon, and it's good to work with you again, and it's good to just, you know, chill, talk boxing, and that's all it has to be, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Agree.
All right, man. Well, shout out
All
to
right,
everyone that
Bill.
tuned in. And shout out to Loz. I put a link for your channel in the description, so everyone go to subscribe to Loz, to Punch Out TV's channel.
Right,
And
cheers, buddy.
like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and I'll see you on the next video.
Peace, George.
Take it easy, man.
See you later, dude.